Welcome to Coming Out of the Spiritual Closet with your host, me, Brittany Wittig. Join me every week to explore and demystify the world of modern spirituality. This week's episode is a powerful one. I interview Megan Evans, a former personal wardrobe stylist turned empowerment coach who has been living with MS, multiple sclerosis, for 19 years. Megan is the creator of the MS Stage and the MS Stage method. And Megan talks about health issues, symptoms, and communicating with our bodies in a completely unique way. She shares processes that I have never heard anyone else speak about. And I actually gave these processes a try myself. When Megan and I recorded this episode, I was going through some pretty serious health issues due to a parasitic infection that I picked up in Mexico. And Megan's methods worked so well for me that honestly, it just blew my mind. I'm so excited to bring you this powerful episode. Every single listener is going to get something valuable out of this episode and out of Megan's holistic approach. So without further ado, here's Megan. Megan, thank you so much for coming on the podcast this week. I'm so happy to have you here, and I'm so excited for my listeners to learn from you.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
So just to get started, can you kind of introduce yourself and tell us about what you do?
Yeah, of course. So I'm Megan Evans. I'm founder and creator of the MS Stage and the MS Stage method. I used to be a personal wardrobe stylist turned empowerment coach, and I myself have had MS, multiple sclerosis, for 19 years now. I'm coming up on my 19-year anniversary. The MS Stage, which we're going to talk about today, was created through my own journey with MS, and so we can talk about that too.
You talk about something that I just find so fascinating and I just think is brilliant. You talk about how symptoms can become our superpowers.
Yes.
So could you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, of course. So I'm a big believer that our symptoms are there to give us messages, that they're not always bad things, that they can be there to literally be your friend, because they're just nudging you, being like, hey, something, you need to pay attention to me. Something's going on. And so they're there to be like, okay, learn to slow down, whatever the message is that they're giving you, but that can become your superpower, because then you're like, oh, I know what I'm supposed to be doing here, and I have the ticket, and they're telling me what to do. So now I just have to go do it and practice it and get better and better at it, whatever that thing is. And so I'll give you an example. The other night I gave a talk, and it was a room full of mostly people with MS. And I did an exercise that I do in the MS Stage. And I led them through a meditation. And one of the women said, yeah, my symptom was telling me I needed to slow down. I needed to do this. I needed to do that. And she had like this whole download of messages that her symptom was giving her. And I said, well, then that's your superpower. And she went, yeah, you're right. It is. It was like this big aha moment for her, because then she said, oh yeah, I can relate to my drop foot. And now I can talk to her and I can tell her it's going to be okay. And it's a really big revelation, because I feel like it really shifts people's mindset out of the negative and into the positive. And it's not like, oh, why is my body frustrating me? Or why am I mad at my body? Or why are you doing this to me? And playing the victim mode. You can play the champion mode, and you can become friends with them and feel empowered in the process. So that's what I'm a huge believer in.
Oh, that is so cool. I love the idea of befriending your symptoms like this and finding the superpower and speaking with your symptoms. It's such an empowering reframe, like you said.
Yeah. Well, and our cells listen.
Yes.
So everything we say, everything we believe, I mean, it's scientifically proven that they're listening. Our symptoms are listening. So if you become their friend, then you can say, hey, we got this. Like my left leg, her name is Roxy, because she drags a little bit sometimes. And But like, the more I talk to her, the more she performs well. So it's like, she knows, right, that I'm her friend. And so when she thinks I'm mad at her, it's like having, right? Like if I was mad at you and you're my good friend and I'm mad at you, you're not going to perform well. Like you're going to go into a hole, or you're going to, whatever your reaction is going to be, right? It's like, think of your symptoms being the same way. They're going to react. If you're giving them food that they don't like, they're going to react, right? If you're giving them things they love, they're going to feel good, and then they're going to perform well. And so it is such a mindset shift, and it's really fun to think about. And because I had a theater background, and the MS stage, comes out of really these characters, right? Like our symptoms are each a character. So we begin to name them. We begin to see them as a character. How old are they? What do they look like? What are they wearing? You can really go deep, and that in and of itself can give you lots of messages too.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I absolutely love this. It's so great. I'm thinking back to when I had cancer and how monumentally helpful this would have been for me. This is so powerful. I love it.
Yeah. And it works we talked about this before we recorded. It works for anything. It can be any autoimmune, any cancer. It can be any symptom of anything. I was that talk the other night. There was a man in the audience who doesn't have MS. His daughter has MS, but he was in the audience, and he has peripheral neuropathy. So he has a lot of pain in his feet. And so so when he named his symptom, I can't even remember the name, but it was really funny, and everybody laughed, and it was awesome because it was so clear what it was and why that name came to him. And so it works for anything. So it's like, it's all about the mindset shift, really, honestly. And that can be empowering in so many ways when you're going through something like this.
Oh, absolutely. Just getting out of that intense resistance, right? Like
totally. Yeah. I mean, speaking of resistance, so I had not accepted my diagnosis for 14 years, which I didn't realize until I had a really bad relapse 5 years ago where I lost feeling from the neck down. And and it took me at least a month. I took a year off work, but it took me a month to 2 months probably to get my mobility back to back to the best that it was going to be at that moment. Yeah. But through that relapse, I realized that I had been resisting my diagnosis for 14 years. And I wasn't willing to say, like, even when I met my husband, I was like, don't tell people I have MS, because I didn't want to own the label. So I would tell people I was diagnosed with MS, because I felt like saying I have MS meant like, oh, my cells are going to hear that and I'm going to own it. And then I don't want to own it. And then I don't want to be associated. So I'm just going to say I was diagnosed with it. So now when I got through that and realized, through a lot of deep work, meditation, therapy, all the things, I realized I had not been accepting of the MS. And it was through that once I fully accepted it, doors began to open and a deeper healing occurred. And because I was in constant fight or flight, like to me, there was no ease in my dis-ease equation at all. I was doing all the right things, right? I was gluten-free, I was dairy-free, I was exercising. I was literally doing all the right things, which I wouldn't be as doing so well that I am almost 20 years in if I hadn't done all the right things. But on a deeper level inside, emotionally, I was in fight or flight because I didn't want to fully believe the whole situation. But once I did that, it was like, oh, right. And I coach women now and teach women who are newly diagnosed, who are going through that. They're lost. They don't want to accept it. They don't want to believe it. They've been healthy their whole lives. They've been athletes. They've been like hardcore athletes. And then suddenly they have no mobility. They're like in a wheelchair quickly. And they've had in 2 years, they have horrible symptoms. And so that to them, it's like it's such a grieving process of their old body. And they don't want to accept it. And it's the key of it, honestly, is to accept it. because once you accept it, you can become more present with it. You can become friends with it. Things begin to unfold in a new way, and you cannot imagine the shifts that these women are having, and some in their symptoms too, not just in their mindset, but also in their symptoms, because it all trickles down too.
Right. Wow.
Yeah, it's been really powerful.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I love what you said there about accepting it is key, because that's how you move forward, is accepting where you are right now.
Yep. It's the key to unlocking it. I really believe that. And I know that because I did it myself. Yeah. And it's like all of a sudden, once you're like, oh yes, I'm willing to accept this. And it's a huge part of my program that I teach, because they can't get anywhere until they get to that point.
Right. Okay.
So they have to really get out of their own way and get to that point of being like, yes, I have this. And now I have to figure out how I'm going to deal with it. But I'm not going to ignore it anymore. And not that these women have been ignoring it. It's more that they just aren't willing to say, they're not, they don't want to accept it. They don't believe it's really, they cannot, they're still in shock. They can't believe it's happening to them. They feel lost. They don't understand, like, why me? I've done all the right things my whole life. And yeah, we all go through that. So why not get ahead of it now? Which is why I'm teaching. I'm trying to catch women before they get 14 years in, like me, right? Like get on it right when you are starting to get newly diagnosed in the last couple of years or whatever.
Yeah. Oh, it's so amazing. It's so amazing that you are a resource like this. I mean,
thank you.
It's incredible. Like, that's powerful, powerful work you're doing.
Thank you.
You've also talked about movement being very essential.
Yes.
In this healing process. Yeah. Could you talk about why working with movement and your symptoms is so essential?
Yes, it's super essential because our emotions are directly related to our symptoms. Like, if I get frustrated, my leg will get worse. If I get whatever it is, right? If I'm angry, my leg will get worse. If I'm joyful, my leg will feel better. So our emotions are directly related to our symptoms. I truly, fully believe that. I mean, that's what somatic therapy is all about. So it's that, right? I created an exercise called the switch exercise, and I guide people through movement with song. And I'm a huge believer that music also helps drive the force, whatever it's negative or positive, deeper into the cells in your body. So they're listening to that too. So I'm a huge believer. I lead meditations with music, and it's like powerful music. And then I lead movement exercise with music, obviously, but we learn to switch our emotions. So I play a song and I call out, I'm like the director of the song, and I say, okay, anger. And so they have to move the emotion of anger. And it doesn't have to be huge, bold, it's not choreographed, it doesn't have to be huge, bold movements. It can be seated in their chair. It can be whatever, or they can be visualizing what that emotion feels like in their body when I call out the word. And then 30 seconds later, they're switching anger to love. Or frustration to ease. So it's a switch, right? So it's learning to switch the mindset, and it's slowly learning for the symptoms to learn, oh, that feels really bad. This feels really good. And so it's learning to switch how our emotions play with our symptoms. And I'll give you an example. The other night at this talk I gave, I can't make this stuff up. It was so powerful. This woman, I did the exercise with them live, and I can't remember I went from like whatever I said before, the negative emotion. And then I said joy. And she said, as soon as she heard joy, her foot, she has really bad drop foot, lifted up 3 to 4 inches. And she said, I can never do that.
Whoa.
So it works. It's powerful work. And she had like this massive shift. She was like, my foot can never do that. I have it recorded. It's amazing. And I was like, I was blown away too. But but if you're open and willing to listen and receive, right, your body is showing you that truly it can heal and miracles can happen, and it's listening to you. So as soon as she heard the word joy, her foot heard the word joy, her foot loved that feeling of joy and wanted more of it. Yes. So it's very powerful, and it's really cool what can happen. And honestly, obviously the other night, it was a very short period of time, but in my program, it can also happen in like 6 weeks. It's amazing what happens with women.
Wow. So it's a 6-week program you do?
Yeah, it's 6 weeks, 2 hours each session.
Okay.
And then I give them homework throughout the week. Yeah. And it's really powerful. And they've got access to a group portal where they can communicate with each other. I check in with them. I give them, I check in to see what their updates are during the week, to see how they're feeling, how the exercises are going for them, make sure they're practicing. Because the more they practice, the work works no matter what. But the more you do it, the more it's going to go deeper and it's going to work more. So, or maybe it'll work faster, at least.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
You have talked about a signature warm-up exercise that you use. I think you use it daily to get in touch with feelings around symptoms. Is that the switch exercise?
That is the switch exercise. Yeah. So you can put a song on, and I have playlists on Spotify under the MS stage that people can follow along, and you put a song on, whatever your symptom, whatever you're feeling that day. So like if you're angry, if you're sad, I've got all different playlists for different emotions.
Okay.
So I'll say, pick a song that day and practice switching it. So you might want to just play one song and move sadness the whole song, but then play a song that's much more upbeat and happy, and then move that the whole song. Or you can pick a song that you every 20 seconds do switch different emotions the whole time to practice what that feels like. So it's really a cool way to warm up your body and also get in touch with, where is my body today? How is my body feeling today? And what is she trying to tell me? So that is cool, and it's powerful. So it's like, I'll pick a song that just, sometimes, like I said, sometimes it's just one song, and I just move one emotion through the song. Or I might say, oh, I'm going to move anger to love today, and just move that depending on how I feel. Or you might feel great and you just want to move joy that morning, because that'll start your day off really well too. You may not want to move bad, negative emotions that day.
So this is something you recommend doing like every morning?
Yeah, I would. Okay. I mean, if you can, or at least a couple times a week, do what you can do. I mean, it really only takes 5 minutes. I mean, most songs are like 3 minutes or whatever. So try one song, try 2 songs. So it really doesn't take long. I mean, you can also do it in the shower.
Totally.
Yeah. Cause sometimes I dance in the shower. I'll just throw on a song, and that's cool too, because you can multitask if you don't have much time. That's a good way to do it.
Oh, interesting. Just a question about your story. I'm curious, because you've obviously had this massive journey with your MS and with your symptoms. What were your symptoms early on, and how did you cope with them initially?
So, I lost feeling on the left side of my body. It went from and then I had really bad vertigo that same time period too. So that was when I was 24 years old.
Okay.
I only had one lesion on my brain at that time. So they couldn't officially say you have MS, but the doctor first said, well, you've either had a stroke, you have a brain tumor, or you have MS. And I was like, I'll take door number 3.
Whoa.
So it was like, okay. And then they did an MRI, and then it was one lesion. So they technically can't diagnose with less than 3 lesions. So they said, well, okay, we think it's MS, but they didn't really know for sure until like 6 months later. And then I had the neurologist tell me, it's as if you've had a stroke. You'll likely end up in a wheelchair one day.
Whoa.
And I looked at my mom at 24 years old, and I was like, no, I won't. Get me out of here. And I didn't, I was like, I'm out. And we left, and I said, never coming back to this man again. And this is sadly how a lot of neurologists think or
Sure.
handle patients.
Yeah.
And I didn't ever go back to him again. And I was really into alternative medicine even back then. I did get on steroids when I needed them. So like, obviously that time I had lost feeling all inside of my body. I was having horrible vertigo. I got on steroids, but I wasn't willing to start an MS drug yet. A, because I didn't want to identify with it.
Sure.
And B, because I didn't believe in it. And 20 years ago, almost 20 years ago, there weren't as many options as there are now for MS drugs. And so I was like, no, I'm fine. I only have one lesion. I can do this. And I was and I am, I am open-minded, but back then I was very set in my ways. And I was like, I can do this. I'm going to cure myself. This is fine. I only have one lesion. I got this. And I am bound and determined, strong-willed, and went, but I did right away. I went gluten-free. And back then people were like, what? Gluten what? Like nobody like 20 years ago, people, yeah. I mean, luckily I was in the process of my first move from New York to LA, and in LA, it was a little more accepted, but it's still kind of not totally understood. But I was like, okay, I'll do that. And then eventually I went dairy free. And then eventually I went grain free in 2013. So my diet changed. I did homeopathy, acupuncture. I did all the things for years. And I truly believe that I wouldn't be doing as well as I am, or I have been, if it hadn't been for doing those things.
Sure.
But emotionally, I hadn't been fully accepting it. So, and we talked about that because acceptance truly is the key. And it was when I had my worst MS episode 5 years ago that I discovered that. So it was a long road. I had ups and downs. I definitely had other exacerbations. They were always brought on by some kind of stressful event or episode. Like I had I think it was like 7 years into my diagnosis, I had a really bad gas leak in my apartment, which I didn't know for 2 days. And so I was sleeping in it and then had a horrible relapse, at which point I got on steroids for that. So I did do the steroids, but I still wasn't subscribing to the medication, MS medication.
Sure.
Yeah.
And then 5 years ago, you talked about having a relapse, and that was when you got into acceptance.
Yes. So 5 years ago, I lost feeling from the neck down and had a really bad relapse. And that was brought on mainly because I was trying to detox. I'm very sensitive. And I was trying to detox like all the, heavy metals and all the bad stuff out of my body.
Sure.
Which is ironic because then it led me to literally having such a bad reaction that I lost feeling from the neck down. And my body was like, no, you can't do this. This is not we can't handle this. And so I had to stop. I stopped everything. I stopped work. My family was like, you're killing yourself. I was a personal wardrobe stylist because I was traveling a lot. I was doing very physical work, shopping for people, hauling boxes up and down stairs, up ladders in their closets, down on my knees. Like it was very physical work and I loved it. And it was part of my identity really, because it's who I had been doing it for over 10 years. And so when I had this relapse, I really had to stop everything. And it was through the just stopping that I realized that I had not fully accepted my MS, that I had been resisting it for 14 years. Because I would say I was diagnosed with MS. I wasn't willing to say I have MS. And so through literally taking a year off work, and luckily I was able to do that, and therapy, and finally getting into meditation and doing all the other things, I discovered like, acceptance really is the key that needs to be unlocked. I mean, the door that needs to be unlocked and gone through in order to get to the other side of this thing. And it wasn't about, I have to cure myself anymore. It slowly became, no, I have to learn to live with this in harmony and peace. And that was the huge acceptance I had to go through. And it took over a year probably. And through that, I started developing these practices that I teach in the MS stage. And I went back to my roots with theater and dance and started developing these practices so that I could figure out a way to deal with it emotionally on another level. And that's exactly what happened. And then the MS stage was born.
Wow. What a massive shift.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
To say the least. I mean, it really taught me to fully slow down, to stop. And that's my superpower. And that's why Roxy, my left leg, showed up to me, because she's like, you have to slow down. You have to stop. And I was go, constant fight or flight, did not meditate. I was just on the go all the time. And yet I'm a very spiritual person. So it was just very ironic, because I'm like, well, I'm such a person to believe in practicing what I preach. Like when I was a stylist, I would always practice what I preached. But then when it came to this, I wasn't practicing what I preached. I would like do all the things, but I would do them because I had to, right? I wasn't doing them because so it was like, like all the time. And then now it's a whole different level, because I've gone so much deeper with it that it's truly a level of like, no, this is, it's okay. It's okay to say I have MS. It's okay. And I'm not owning it. Right. I can still see it from up here or see it from here and embrace it like she's a friend.
Yeah.
But that's the only true way to heal, I believe.
Yeah.
Because if you're fighting it, it's going to be worse. They don't want to be fought, Our symptoms don't want to fight with us.
Yes.
And they're there to give us messages.
Oh, yes. I love it.
They're there to teach us something, right?
Right. Yes. I just love this perspective. Talking about symptoms, how does someone like identify characteristics of their symptom? How would you suggest that someone start to get to know their symptoms and maybe their most challenging symptom?
Yes. So I lead my students through a meditation to teach them how to name their symptom. So the first thing I would do, even without having to meditate necessarily, you just take a few deep breaths. And honestly, when you're thinking about your symptom, whether it's your leg, your foot, your stomach, whatever is going on in your body, begin to see, what does it look like? And is there a name that it wants me to know? And is it male or female? Is it an object? It could be a sculpture. It could be whatever you envision, right? And honestly, I tell people, don't overthink it. It's the first name that comes to you. So yeah, I don't want you to be like, what is the name? Like, I need to go through a journaling process. No, I just want you to be like, I want you to literally ask your symptom what its name is. And once you have the name, then you can begin to discover and go, okay, well, how old are you? What do you look like? What is your character? Like, really begin to get to know who they are. And they might be male, like I said, male or female, or an object or a thing or whatever, and begin to really start to go down a discovery path so that you can create a new story around it and see what comes up for you. You can talk to it on a deeper level, keep asking it questions, keep talking to it. I mean, I posted a meditation the other day that was just like 2 or 3 minutes. That's like, what does your symptom want to tell you today? Like, what's it trying to tell you today? Maybe you just need more rest. Maybe it wants you to slow down. Maybe it's telling you that you need more protein. I don't know. I'm like, there could be a bunch of things. Or maybe it's telling you you want to dance. It wants to dance with you. So dance with it, like really start to evolve what is that relationship with your symptom. And it's kind of cool. It's amazing to see what happens.
Oh, I just totally love this way of like speaking to your body and connecting to it.
Yeah.
And it's on like a really deep level.
Yeah, because it listens.
Yeah.
Like my body's listening to me all the time. So if I'm telling it negative stuff or saying I'm not good enough or saying like getting frustrated with it, or why aren't you working today, or why, whatever, then it's going to respond in that way. It's going to be like, well, I'm trying,
Right.
I mean, I'm trying to help you. I'm trying to work with you, but I don't know. I can't, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do with you. And so it's like, but if you think about it like that, right? Like you're literally having, like, think of it as like a little child or something. And it's like, no, but I'm here for you. Like, I'm really trying here. And so if you talk to it like, okay, I get you. I have compassion for you. I have empathy. I understand this is really hard work. And I know you love me. And I know you're really trying to work hard for me. So let's work together, right? Like, let's be a team. So how can we do that? And then you can start to really kind of develop that relationship, and think of it like, like I have such a clear picture of who Roxy is in my head. And she is a badass, and so when I talk to my leg, I'm like, yeah, girl, you got this,
Yes.
And so it's like, and honestly, I'm not making this up when I say that she performs when I talk to her. Like, I'll be walking up the stairs, and sometimes walking up the stairs can be harder for me. And I'm like, no, Roxy, we got this. You got this. Like, come on, let's go. She gets better. I mean, it's like, it just happens.
It makes total sense to me that would be the case. I mean, it's so interesting to me. I've never heard anyone talk about symptoms in this way. And it's brilliant. And it makes so much sense too, because if you think about everything, this is a spiritual podcast. So most of my listeners are very into the idea that everything is energy. Everything is vibration.
Yes.
And so it's like the vibration that you are sending to your body, the vibration you're sending to your symptoms is going to completely affect them.
Absolutely. No, and I'm a super spiritual person too. And so I'm a huge believer in talking to our bodies like they're their own entity, right? And then if you're talking to them, then whoever your source is also listening and believing and helping you heal or helping your body. It's like that connection is going to continue to grow and grow and grow and stay more positive and keep you in the light, right? Like, keep you enveloped in the light and in the positive, because it's only going to get, when people play the victim mode of any health journey they're on, you see how people, like, how they act, or if they're acting like really pitiful, right? Directly relates to how bad off they are typically.
Yes.
Or versus, you can see somebody who's like, say they had the exact same diagnosis, exact same symptoms, exact same everything, and you put victim mode on them versus you have champion mode on them, the champion's gonna be doing way better than the person who's playing the victim mode, who's playing pitiful.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's 100%.
So it's like really fascinating. It's really cool to watch. It's fun to be a part of. Like, miracles can and do happen. And it's really cool. I mean, what I experienced the other night with this talk I gave was like, I was like, oh my gosh, like, I don't make it up. I call on source. I call on everyone's ancestors and their angels and their archangels, and they don't need to hear me. I don't tell them I'm doing that. I just do that, before I give a talk or before I teach. But all of that is all connected also, because once you do that, then people are more open probably than they knew that they could be. But only because that's like my secret little thing that I do that they don't even know I'm doing.
Oh, that's brilliant. I love that. Yeah. Absolutely. Before I teach, I always do the same thing. That's so great.
Yeah. And and people who aren't into that stuff, it's like, they don't need to know, because we all have angels and we all have, beings supporting us in whatever way. So it's not like, I'm not like putting some voodoo thing on them. It's just, it's all good stuff.
It's all positive. It's all love-based.
Totally.
So something that came up as you were talking that I'm curious about, do you find, and I don't know, this is just a total curiosity, but have you found that talking out loud to your symptoms versus like talking in your head makes a difference? Like, is there any benefit to speaking it out loud?
I think there could be a stronger benefit to speaking it out loud, but I don't think you have to do that at all. I think some people can just visualize things getting better and they've had experience with it getting better. Like everybody in my talk the other night, they didn't actually get up, and because a lot of them were on canes or walkers or wheelchairs. So nobody actually got out of their seat to do the dance movement. They just did it sitting. And all had powerful, some people cried, some people, the woman whose foot raised that she didn't think could happen ever, that hasn't happened in years. Wow. You know, I mean, some people just, they had really strong responses, and that was just them visualizing all being in the space together, right? The energy of that. Yes. Which is really powerful, the power of community, and which is why I lead groups on Zoom, which is why my program is a group of women, because it's like, it's much more powerful when you're doing this work together. So no, I don't think it all has to be out loud. I think it can be. Sure. I mean, I think it's whatever feels good to you. I mean, I tell people to, sometimes in my program, I'll teach like to have them sigh it out. Or like add sound to their movement, because if they're really frustrated, I'm like, just yell, just get it out. Just like get that energy out of you, the negative energy. Yeah. So, and then just bring in the joy. So I think it's all a matter of whatever feels good in their bodies. Okay. Because their body knows what they need. Yeah. Right.
That makes sense. Okay. Well, this has been amazing, Megan. Thank you so much
for having me.
I mean, this is just so brilliant what you're doing. I love the work you're doing. I love your perspective. How can people get in touch with you?
Okay, so if this resonated with you, you can go to the link in the show notes to join a group in my program. If you're not quite ready to join a group, I would love to get you started on your journey. You can schedule a call with me to help you talk through what your symptom is there to teach you and what your symptom's name is. And I can help you decide what 2 shifts you can make right away to start feeling better and stop feeling like the victim and start feeling more empowered. Yeah. And then you can join my newsletter, which is you get a free meditation by joining my newsletter list, which also will be down in the link in show notes.
Yep, absolutely. I'll link to everything in the show notes. So you can just scroll down there right now and you'll find those links. Awesome. Thank you so much for being here, Megan. I so appreciate you coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a true pleasure.
And everyone have a beautiful week. We'll catch you next time.